Attachment is Forbidden, an Obi-Wan Kenobi fanfiction by Dead Sparrow. Chapter 7, Meeting Anakin Skywalker. Aure's perspective. The next day was very calm, but I was nervous. I was sitting on a couch wondering if that slave boy had run the race. We had risked everything trusting him. Well, actually, Qui-Gon had risked everything. Besides, I missed Padmé and our long conversations, and, as her protector, I was insanely worried about her. I really wanted to see her and know if she was safe. Although Obi-Wan, who had noticed my affection for Padmé, reassured me many times that Qui-Gon would have contacted us if something bad had happened to her, I wouldn't be sure until I saw that myself. While I was lost in my own thoughts, looking at nothing but the wall in front of me, Obi-Wan talked to me. "Aure, they're back!" I quickly turned my head to him with a questioning look on my face. He just laughed. "I'm not kidding. Go and see Padmé." It happened fast. I stood up and smiled, approached him, and took his hand. Then I started to run, pulling Obi-Wan with me, his hand still in mine, to get out of the Queen's ship. Once we were outside, standing on the planet's sandy ground, I saw Qui-Gon and Padmé riding on something I can't pronounce, but I'm lazy to figure it out. They were carrying some kind of engine behind them. Before they were too close, Obi-Wan released my hand, which I wished he hadn't done. Soon, Qui-Gon and my best friend stopped some meters in front of us, and I ran towards Padmé before helping her to get down from the thing she was riding. When she was down, I hugged her and she laughed. "It's just been a few days," she joked after breaking the hug. "I was very worried about you," I replied. She just smiled at me and looked at something behind me. "What?" I asked, confused. Turn around," she said, smirking. I did so, and saw Obi-Wan looking at us. Or at me. We'll never know. With a smile on his face, which made him look really cute, I blushed and turned to Padmé again, looking at the ground. She talked again. "Is there something between you two?" What? No, I replied nervously, still not looking into her eyes. Of course. She just made me feel even more nervous. "Anyway, I think Master Qui-Gon wants to talk to you and his Padawan. I'll get into the ship," she said before leaving and entering the ship. I suppose she needed to talk with her decoy. I approached Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, who were talking already. The Master was still on his thing. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. I stood next to Obi-Wan when he said, "Why do I sense we've picked up another pathetic life form?" That made me smile as I remembered he had told me about the day they had found Jar Jar. "It's the boy who was responsible for getting those parts," Qui-Gon said before turning and heading back to the city. I looked at Obi-Wan and asked him excited, "So the boy won the race?" "Won the race?" "Yes, he did. Now we've got a new hyperdrive generator thanks to him. My master told me to get it installed before he comes back." "Where did he go?" I asked while looking at Qui-Gon, who was already a long distance away from us. "He told me he has some unfinished business. I suppose he's going to look for the slave boy, so he'll come with us," he answered. The tone of his voice made it seem like he was a bit annoyed by this. He headed to the ship and I followed him. "You are not very happy about the boy coming with us, are you?" I asked with a knowing smile on my face. "You're quite right about that," he replied as we entered the Queen's spaceship. We went into the cockpit in order to get the hyperdrive installed with the help of the pilot. Right after we had finished, I saw a blonde kid running towards the ship and, further away, I could see Master Qui-Gon fighting someone. The kid came to the cockpit from the main hallway of the spaceship and exclaimed, "Qui-Gon is in trouble. He said to take off." "Over there," Obi-Wan pointed at his master to indicate to the pilot where to go. "Fly low." When the ship was close enough to the Jedi Master, he jumped onto the ramp and escaped from his enemy. The ramp closed, and the ship left Tatooine, leaving our new enemy behind. Obi-Wan and I rushed into the hallway with the child following us, to find Qui-Gon collapsed on the floor near the entry. He was breathing hard, sweating, and covered in dirt. It was obvious it had been a hard fight if a Jedi Master had gotten exhausted. The three of us knelt down beside him, the child being between Obi-Wan and me. "Are you all right?" the kid asked him, very concerned. I think so. That was a surprise I won't soon forget," the Master answered. "What was it?" Obi-Wan asked. "I don't know, but he was well trained in the Jedi arts. I didn't know someone who could be trained in the Jedi arts without being a Jedi. My guess, he was after the Queen." "Do you think he'll be following us?" the kid asked him. "Stop asking me questions and let him rest," I thought. "We'll be safe enough once we're in hyperspace, but I have no doubt he knows our destination," Qui-Gon replied, calmed, as if we didn't have enough enemies already. "What are we going to do about it?" the kid asked, and I rolled my eyes, wondering if he'd ever stop asking questions. "We will be patient," Qui-Gon simply answered. Anakin Skywalker, meet Obi-Wan Kenobi and Aure Cinder. He introduced us. You're a Jedi too? Pleased to meet you, the kid, whose name I now knew was Anakin, exclaimed, amazed while shaking hands with Obi-Wan, who had nodded and gave him a small smile. Anakin then held out his hand to me and asked, "And are you a Jedi?" Okay, the kid asked way too many questions, but he was sweet and I was starting to like him. I smiled nicely at him, shook his hand, and replied, "I'm afraid not. I'm just the Queen's lifeguard." "Well, pleased to meet you, Aure," he smiled. I spent the rest of the day catching up with Padmé, telling her about the new friendship I shared with Obi-Wan, trying not to tell her much so she wouldn't suspect I had feelings for him. I trusted her, of course, but I couldn't tell her. Not just yet. Chapter 8. Coruscant. Aure's perspective. It was nighttime and I was trying to sleep in the room that I had to share with the Queen's servants. While I was tossing and turning trying to sleep, I noticed that Padmé wasn't in her bed. I stood up and silently, trying not to wake anybody, I got out of the room to look for her and maybe drink something that would help me sleep. While looking for Padmé, I heard two people talking in a room. I followed their voices to find my best friend with Anakin. I saw Anakin handing her a wooden pendant. "It's beautiful, but I don't need this to remember you," she said while looking at the gift. She continued, "Many things will change when we reach the capital, Annie, but my caring for you will always remain." I smiled at how kind she was with the boy. "I care for you too, only I miss..." Anakin tried to say something, but he was disturbed, and there were tears in his eyes. "You miss your mother," Padmé finished for him. Padmé hugged and left Anakin, who fell asleep quickly on the couch. I stopped her when she was near me. "Don't become too close with the boy. We will probably not see him in a long time after this is over," I warned her, whispering so no one would listen to us. "Anakin misses his mother. He has nobody now. He needs a friend." When she said this, I remembered how big her heart was. She was willing to comfort a boy she had met 3 days ago. That was one of the many things that made her a great queen, her kindness. "Master Qui-Gon wants him to become a Jedi. That means he will train for years, probably in Coruscant. Naboo is far away from here," I reminded her. "You should probably be sleeping." She suddenly changed the topic of the conversation. I understood she didn't want to talk about Anakin. "So do you." She had no reply for that, and I smiled proudly. "You can't sleep?" I showed concern in my voice. "No, my mind's full of thoughts about Naboo, about the Federation, about that person Qui-Gon fought." She looked down, trying not to show the tears that had started to fill in her eyes. "I'm not the queen I'm supposed to be. I should be helping my people, but I'm hiding instead, pretending to be a servant." "Everything will be fine. You're a great queen, and your people know that. You hide because you mustn't be killed, because your people need you." She looked up at me again when I said this. "We're going to Coruscant now, and you'll talk with the Chancellor and the Senators. Just as the queen you are, you'll convince them and they'll all help us. The Federation can't do anything as long as you're the queen. The best queen Naboo has ever had." I smiled nicely. "Please, go to bed and try to sleep." "You should sleep too," she replied. "Having a restless lifeguard wouldn't be useful." I laughed at this and nodded. I went back to bed, but sleep didn't come that night. The next morning, we arrived at Coruscant early in the morning. I hadn't slept a bit, so I was wide awake when the ship landed on the planet, right in front of the Senate building, where Chancellor Valorum and some guards and senators, Palpatine was one of them, were already waiting for the Queen. They all bowed before her. Coruscant was new to me, so I looked around with curiosity while the Chancellor and Senator Palpatine talked. I loved the tall buildings, the speeders flying around, the lights. I noticed it was crowded, and I wondered if it was always like that. Although it was beautiful, there wasn't any nature to be seen, no waterfalls and trees like the ones in Naboo. Nature was one of my favorite things about my home planet. I enjoyed having long walks on the beach or the hills when I had some free time. Sometimes I'd go to Padmé and together we'd talk about anything. Naboo's nature was very relaxing. That was until the Federation came. Since they arrived to our beautiful planet, I didn't have much free time, and Padmé had even less than me. "Do you like Coruscant?" A soft voice whispered behind me. I didn't need to look at him to know that it was Obi-Wan. We were at the back of the group, and no one could listen to us. "I do, although it's very different than Naboo," I replied, thinking about the hidden waterfall I had found when I was a child, which became my favorite place of the galaxy as soon as I saw it. The little time I spent in Naboo was enough for me to realize it's a very beautiful planet. I smiled at his comment. "Everything from Naboo is beautiful," I told him. "It is indeed," Obi-Wan said with an even softer voice while he barely touched my hand. I turned my head to him and found he was looking intensely at me with a small smile playing on his lips. I blushed and looked away before Qui-Gon approached us. The Queen and Anakin are leaving with Senator Palpatine. They have much to talk about, the Master told me. I should go with her then, I replied. I had to stay with the Queen, although she wasn't the real one, just so nobody would suspect. Qui-Gon nodded and added, I must speak with the Jedi Council immediately. The situation has become more complicated. Obi-Wan and I nodded at this. I hope I'll see you both later, I told the Jedi Knights with a smile. Qui-Gon smiled back and walked away. Take care, Aure, Obi-Wan told me. I will. Take care of you too, I said, looking into his eyes. Time seemed to stop at this very moment, staring into his blue eyes, which stared back at mine, until Qui-Gon shouted at his Padawan, Are you coming, Obi-Wan? You'll see her later! Obi-Wan smiled apologetically at me, turned around, and ran towards his master. I joined the fake Queen, Anakin, and Senator Palpatine, and left with them to the Senator's quarters, where the Queen would discuss many matters with them.